Good day, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Zlatan's Fight Picks. Today we're going to go over the recap of UFC 283, which was our picks for last Saturday. We did pretty good on the parlays. The highest probability parlay came in, and the second most highest probability came in. The picks for the 51% and the 50% and the no picks, of course, those ones, didn't all come in. But as expected, this is why they were very, very low probability. And we should be sticking to the high probability. And of course, once in a while, you could sprinkle a little bit to the lower probability ones, just because if they hit, the payout's huge. But I would definitely not encourage a lot of money being put on those, and always keep them separate from your parlays for the higher probability. Just because the higher probability are probably going to hit, and you don't want to contaminate them with a bunch of low probability picks, because if one goes wrong, you lose the entire parlay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go over the fight recap for the fights on Saturday, and we're going to go in the same order as we did them, which was basically from the first fight to the last fight. And we'll recap the fights, we'll compare them to our predictions, and then we'll go over the parlay board and to see visually what happened, what hit, what did not hit. So the first fight, Daniel Marcos versus Saimon Oliveira. Daniel Marcos, we picked to win. He was at 50% plus, so he was an underdog, and we had picked him to win with a 50% slight lean towards him. He was the underdog. He did great. He did what we expected him to do. He's a much better striker, very much accurate, more accurate than Saimon Oliveira. Oliveira came in throwing wild punches, trying to take him to the ground. Couldn't take him to the ground. I think he took him to the ground one time, and I think Daniel Marcos got up pretty quick. He kept him at range. Saimon Oliveira, of course, has a really good guillotine. Usually it happens defensively, where he gets taken down and he catches the neck. But that didn't happen because Daniel Marcos, of course, didn't want to take him down. He had fantastic body kicks, really hurt Saimon Oliveira, and that's what pretty much did it, is the body shots, and his body kicks and body shots just sealed it for Saimon Oliveira. And it was what we expected. That Daniel Marcos is a good striker. He put on a clinic. Saimon Oliveira unfortunately couldn't get his guillotine, couldn't get it to the ground, couldn't control him, had some wild shots, and he's just not a really good striker. But it was what we expected, so that one worked out. Next fight, Josiana Nunes versus Zara Ferran dos Santos. Josiana Nunes, she won the fight. She won it on decision. It was a close fight. I think it was a split decision. Was it 29-28? Either way, it was a really close fight. Josiana Nunes, she's tough. She's got good combinations. She's a good striker. But what we had brought up back then is that she's too short. She's probably too short for the division. She probably should go down one weight class. Zara Ferran dos Santos, I've never seen her look so good. I saw her at the 2 fights previous in the UFC, but she fought really high-level grapplers and girls who are ranked and high-level grapplers, and she looked terrible. This fight, she looked really good. Very long, used her kicks, used her jab, very accurate punches. Josiana Nunes had to go through fire to get to her because it was just so hard to reach her, and she is so much taller, so much longer. Josiana Nunes had huge problems, but she toughed it out and she won. I don't know if Zara Ferran dos Santos is going to stay in the UFC. I'm looking forward to seeing her fight maybe another striker. She looked really good. But we had picked Zara to lose, and she did lose. She lost the decision. We picked Nunes to win. Nunes was actually a high probability pick. The fight was a little too close for my liking. But we expected her to win, and she did win. Hopefully she moves down a weight class. 5'2" for this division is she's tiny compared to 5'8" with Zara. Actually, even looked bigger than that. Zara looked like a giant compared to her, literally like a giant. But it worked out. Next fight, Nicholas Dalby versus Warley Alves. This is one of the fights that it was a no pick. Like it was 50-50. Nicholas Dalby, good veteran. He's getting up there in age. He's 38 years old, but he's strong, powerful, great cardio, sticks to a game plan, knows how to win fights, very disciplined. Warley Alves, younger, powerful, explosive, great on the ground, good submissions, very powerful strikes, unpredictable in how he's going to come out, unpredictable gas tank, doesn't always make the best decisions, right? So we stayed away from it, but in the end, we did. I'll pick a fight in any category, and I did pick Nicholas Dalby, and he did win this fight. It was a close fight. I think Nicholas Dalby did enough to win, but it was a very close fight. Let me see. Was it a split decision? Yeah, I believe it was a split decision. It was close, but I believe Dalby won it. Next fight, Ismail Bonfim versus Terrence McKinney. This fight, I had Terrence McKinney at 51%, which is just barely over 50. I know more about Terrence McKinney. I've seen him fight. He's great. Ismail Bonfim looked fantastic. This guy's the real deal. Looks super sharp, super fast, super aggressive. He was right on point. Terrence McKinney, very lethargic, very slow. I have not seen him look this bad. He doesn't look like the same fighter that I was expecting. I've seen him fight other guys. Looked fantastic. This guy did not look himself. Now either he didn't prepare properly, or the last knockout, which was a really bad knockout by Stu Dober, took his soul, because this is a shell of the guy that I've seen fight. And I don't know if he's just not training hard enough, if he's at the wrong gym, or if he's just getting too comfortable with these highlight reels. And people love him and he's pretty popular. He's a great fighter. He's exciting. I don't know. But he didn't look really good. He didn't look good. He didn't look like the same Terrence McKinney. He very slow, looked like he was getting tired. Yeah, it didn't look good for him. But Ismail Bonfim, on the other hand, looked fantastic. Looking forward to see him fight. We did have a slight 51% towards Terrence McKinney. He was in a low probability parlay leg, so it didn't affect our high probabilities, but it didn't help us perpetuate like a further larger parlay. That kind of stopped with Terrence McKinney. Next fight, Cody Stamann versus Luan Lacerda. Cody Stamann again, he is a 51%. We had picked him just slightly, with Luan Lacerda being, we had a double pick where we had put him in one and taken him out of another parlay just because of the submission threat that he possessed. And of course I thought that Cody Stamann was built just right, where he probably would not get submitted by Lacerda, very short, stocky, all body, no limbs. But Luan Lacerda did good. I believe Cody Stamann won. Cody Stamann did win the fight in a decision, unanimous decision, 29-28. Luan Lacerda looked really good. I think he took Cody Stamann down, and Cody Stamann did get back up. Very, very powerful, hard to submit Cody Stamann, just the way he's built. Having said that, Luan Lacerda looked really good with his striking. Really good body shots, very hard body shots, hard leg kicks to the body. Was really affecting Cody. Luan Lacerda won the third round clearly. That first round was up in the air. I think, the judges called it correctly. Cody had a lot of strikes, not super significant strikes, but a lot of slapping kicks, a lot of strikes, where the more powerful punches and more powerful kicks came from Lacerda. They weren't enough to win that round. Moving on. Jailton Almeida versus Shamil Abdurakhimov. Jailton Almeida was a high probability pick for me. He was the highest, 70%. And he dominated Shamil Abdurakhimov. And Jilton Almeida, as we have said, is fighting heavyweight, but he's really a light heavyweight. So he's coming in a lot lighter than these guys. But he's very strong, very powerful. And he dominated this guy and got him on the ground fairly easily. And it wasn't difficult. Although there was a moment right at the beginning of the fight with the first punch where Jilton came in, threw a leg kick to kick Shamil, and Shamil just threw a super hard right hand straight down the pipe, right on the chin. For a second I stopped thinking, is this guy gonna go down? Because this was a very hard shot. He didn't go down, and he continued with a takedown and dominated the fight. But this just goes to show that this guy is not the best striker. He's a great ground guy, and at this level, I hope he's realizing that you get a big enough guy who's a strong enough puncher, you might not be able to withstand that straight shot. Something he's got to work on, because when he gets up to the upper levels, when these guys hit you that clean, you generally go down. So we'll see what happens. But he's great. I mean, the guy's powerful. He won easily dominated this fight, except for that one moment where he got tagged with the first punch. That got me worried. He was a minus 1,000 favorite. I mean, he's a huge favorite. Next fight, Gabriel Bonfim versus Mounir Lazzez. This fight, it was a 50-50 for me. I picked 50-50 with a slight lean on Mounir because I've seen the experience in the striking. He's a great striker. Gabriel Bonfim, he's a pretty good striker. And I had said that Gabriel Bonfim is really tricky on the ground. I've seen him pull out some submissions that took everyone by surprise. And that's how it kind of played out. Mounir was pretty good on the feet. Gabriel was pretty good on the feet. I think Gabriel might have had an advantage with a few hits and punches. And Mounir, it was just the beginning of the fight. He was just getting warmed up. And then Mounir kind of went at him with his head down. I don't know if he was trying to take him down or if he just went down too low. Gabriel quickly jumped up, snagged the guillotine, literally up in the air, because the fact is that he'd only dipped his head a little bit. But when this Gabriel he's a great submission guy. He jumped, took advantage of it, and Mounir followed through with a takedown. I don't know if he was his intention to take him down, or if once he got caught in that guillotine, he thought, okay, maybe I'll just finish taking this guy down. But Gabriel, just quick as a cat, quickly jumped up, put his legs on Mounir, fell back down. Mounir falls on top of him. With the momentum, lifts Mounir over him with his legs, ends up on top of Mounir in the full mount with his legs tied up. Mounir's legs tied up by Lazzez's legs, not on the ground, up in the air, can't defend himself, finishes the choke. It was one of the best guillotine chokes I've seen. Just the way he did it, with him jumping up, falling back down, with the momentum, lifting the guy over his head, flip-flopping him completely around, ending up on top, in the full mount, with his legs towel tied up, and the guillotine tight. It was a quick tap. It was good. So we had predicted this guy had great submission skills, and it was a great submission. Again, it was a 50 plus for Mounir. He was further down in our parlay leg. It didn't affect the main parlays. Next fight, Mel Costa versus Thiago Moises. Thiago Moises is a 55% parlay. He was the second highest. He was in the second highest category of confidence, and as expected, Thiago Moises, kept working on him, strike with Costa for a while, and eventually took him down to the ground and wore him down and dominated him on the ground, and of course eventually submitted him, which was something we seen Thiago Moises do, although Costa did put up a really good fight for the first couple of rounds. Next fight. Bruno Ferreira versus Gregory Rodriguez. Well, this is one of the fights where we had Gregory Rodriguez at a 51%. Low probability, but we are still picking him. Gregory Rodriguez is a ground guy who has fallen in love with striking. He's knocked out a few guys. He keeps saying that he loves the war and the brawl and the throwing the back and forth and taking punches and knocking people out. And what I had said in the last evaluation was he's a ground guy. He's fighting Bruno Ferreira, who is called the Hulk, who is a striker, only a striker. So his path to victory is to knock you out. And I had said that if Gregory Rodriguez is smart, he'd take him to the ground and possibly win this fight. But I was worried that Gregory Rodriguez would not do that. And he did not do that. He struck with him. And even though Gregory Rodriguez was winning the striking battle, in the exchanges, Gregory Rodriguez was winning. But when he got Ferreira to the cage, they were very close to each other. Ferreira gave him a couple of looks. Gregory didn't really move, kind of kept his head in the one spot, and Ferreira realized, you know what, no matter what look I give this guy, his head's staying in one spot, because Gregory Rodriguez had only one thing in mind: I'm going to knock this guy out. And he's the one who got knocked out. He got, a straight punch, I believe it was straight left, right to the chin, and he went out, and the fight was over instantly. The referee saw that and immediately called it a fight. He was out cold. So he had fallen into that trap where he had lost the only way the other guy could win. I hope he's learning from this, because he is a ground guy. He's got to mix this up. Next fight, Ihor Potieria versus Mauricio Rua. Mauricio Rua, legend in the sport, was going to retire after this fight. Like I said, I love this guy. If you get a chance to watch him on all the old Pride fights, watch him. It was amazing. Ihor Potieria, a big, strong guy, throws big punches, can take a lot of punishment. We expected this to be a brawl. It was going to be a brawl. Mauricio Rua, being the older guy, eventually got tired, got the worst of exchanges. He hit Ihor a few times, and but Ihor took those punches, but it stung him really good. And of course, as expected, Mauricio Rua, a little too old, couldn't withstand the onslaught of the young guy, and he's a big guy. I had picked Mauricio more of, he was part of the don't bet category. I wouldn't bet on this fight. But because I always pick a pick, I did pick Rua, probably with my heart. Hopefully he'd win one more before he retired. It didn't quite work out. But it was entertaining, but he looked really old, and there's a reason why he's retiring. Next fight, Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. This is a high probability pick for us. We picked Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker won. Johnny Walker dominated Paul Craig. Paul Craig, great submission guy. Johnny Walker just had to stay away from the submissions and be careful with that. Once Paul Craig's on his back, he's very tricky. But Johnny Walker, hit him really hard and just went on top of him and wicked hammer fists and pretty much finished Paul Craig fairly easily. Paul Craig, great submission guy. This guy cannot take people down. He's always being taken down, and then he works his submission into that. If he could figure out or practice or train to take people down, he would be a much more dangerous fighter, because his takedowns are terrible. He's a little chinny at times, but so is Johnny Walker. But Johnny Walker, very long, very big, very powerful, and just dominated that fight, kind of how we expected. Next fight, Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy. High probability fight for Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade dominated this fight, 3 rounds, pummeled Lauren Murphy, beat her everywhere. Just beat the hell out of her. Lauren Murphy didn't have an answer, couldn't take her down. It's always been not a great striker, very stiff, very, doesn't move very well, but she's a big girl and she's strong and she's tough, and she took it all. But she took a beating from Jessica Andrade, who we couldn't finish her, but just beat her from pillar to post. So, as expected, Jessica Andrade won this fight, and she did great. There's a reason why she was such a huge favorite. Next fight, Neil Magny versus Gilbert Burns. High probability fight for us. We had bet on Gilbert Burns to win. Gilbert Burns won fairly easily. He's a smart fighter. He didn't sit there and stand and exchange continually with Neil Magny, who was the much taller fighter, who was the much longer fighter with a huge reach. He likes to go around the outside and hit you with his jab and keep you at bay. Gilbert Burns threw some really good combinations and immediately took him down to the ground. And of course, once he got him on the ground, he submitted him because Gilbert Burns is a fantastic ground guy. He's a good striker, but he is a ground guy. And he played into his strengths, and he stayed out of danger. Next fight. Brandon Moreno versus Davidson Figueiredo. I had this fight as a 50-50. And of course, I leaned towards Figueiredo, as I explained that I'm not a big fan of Morano. But Davidson Figueiredo lost the fight. It was fairly clear. You know, he got dominated. And Moreno won the fight. It was a fight that was further down on our parlay legs, so it really didn't affect the main parlays. But Brandon Moreno looked great. Figueiredo is going to be moving up in weight class. I think he has a really hard time with his weight cut. It's a shame that he had to lose to Moreno and then move on. But that's the way it is. We'll see if who he fights next and who Moreno fights next. Whoever Moreno is fighting next, I'm picking him. I'm just kidding. Gonna pick the other guy. No, let's not go into that emotional state. Next fight, Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira. We had a high probability with Glover Teixeira with a caveat where he might be too old. Realistically, Glover Teixeira at his best should beat this guy. But every year, he gets older and older, 43. And sure enough, Glover Teixeira fought his heart out. He's getting older. He's probably everything is not working out for him. And Jamal Hill looked the best I've ever seen him look. I've never seen him look better, as a matter of fact. This was the best version of Jamal Hill I've ever seen. I don't know if this is permanently going to be Jamal Hill or everything just aligned for him for this fight. He looked great. He dominated Glover. Although Glover ended up getting on top of him and couldn't finish submitting him. Glover, he didn't look 100%. Of course, he's 43 years old. He was a high probability pick, and we had a caveat to that where we would pick that leg and every leg with Glover in it and have a separate parlay with Glover completely out of it. And that was something we had talked about over the parlays, just because he's 43 years old. And sure enough, at the end of the fight, Glover retires. So, yes, even he thinks he's a little too old for this. So he retired right at the end of the fight. So it was kind of the right call, right? So that's just the way it worked out. So now we're going to go over the actual board. We'll talk about what we had picked and where we had won. And let me move the camera. Technology challenged. Hopefully everybody sees this. So we will go over our picks. We'll check this off. We had the 60 to 70% apart from the Teixeira, which we had made a second parlay bet without him in it, which is the ones that won. The 55% picks, which are again high probability picks, they had all won. And then we get to the 51%, 50 and 50%. I do a couple of different ways, and I'll show you guys real quick. Almeida won. Let me pick something else. Almeida won. Burns 1. Nunes 1. So that group of parlays had 1. Andrade 1. Walker 1. Nunes and Moises 1. What I do is I have a fight parlay for each column, and then I have a fight parlay that combines the columns going from left to right. So then I had a separate parlay which included all 6 of them. And that was another parlay which expanded going from most likely to least likely. So all these are the ones. So the individual parlays 1, and then the combination of the parlays 1. Now going to the 51%, these are the ones that, again, bet if you want to bet. I mean, now you're really getting kind of into the toss-up phases. I personally bet all the columns, but that's just because they're my picks and I really want to see if I'm going to get them correctly. I have a much lower amount that I do on these. And I also, as I expand my parlay pieces, I'll go with the first 2, then I'll go with the first 3. And then I'll go with the first 4, then I'll go with the first 5, just because that's how I break it down. But as I get further along the parlay line, I have less and less money on it, just because it's a higher and higher risk. But the reward is greater and greater. So, I mean, the multiple effect of it. Once you do hit it, you've probably paid enough for your parlays for the next year. So it does, and it hits, 2-3 times a year for sure. Wow, for me it does. I don't know about everybody else, but Rodriguez, he lost. McKinney, he lost. Stamen, he won. And we had a pick where we put Stamen in one, and then I also had Lacerda in another version of the parlay, which is why I also have less money in these parlays, because I get to sometimes play around with a couple of the individuals without making it so expensive. So I had Lacerda in one of them too, and sure enough, that fight was pretty close, but Stamen did win, and so it didn't matter because there were so many other ones wrong in that 51%. Next one, 50-50. Figueiredo lost, Lazez lost, Marcos won. Every one of these 50-50s with a plus, with a leaning, I had picked the underdogs. So all the two of the underdogs lost. One of the underdogs had won. It just goes to show you just don't know. Sometimes the underdogs come through, sometimes they don't. That's why it's so hard to pick a super long parlay. It never happens where all the favorites win, ever. I've never had it where, I've had it where the majority of the the underdogs won. Oh man, if you pick those ones, that's the odds and the multiple on that would be amazing. I haven't hit those ones yet where so many of the underdogs won. Those are like very rare, but it does happen. So the 50-50 where I said no bet, Rua had lost and Dalby had won. Again, as we go along further and further, the less likelihood of getting them, which is why you want to stick to the high probability ones. Of course, you want to gamble a little. That's fine. I know I do. And then I'll expand it from this area. I'll add this, and then I'll have a separate parlay where I'll add this. Then I'll have a separate parlay where I add this, etc., kind of going out from that. And that way you don't have these guys as a part of your main parlay where they're a total toss-up. And because one of these guys loses and everything is for naught, basically, because even though all these are right, it's irrelevant in a parlay. You have to get all of them right. So it's also important how you break it down and how you want to separate the two. Separate the parlays from each other, where you have these stop gaps where not everything is hinging on every single person to go exactly your way. Because I've had it where sometimes you realize that one guy is in every one of your parlays and that guy lost. So every single one of your parlays is dead in the water. So you don't know who that guy might be, where somebody gets upset. or lost the fight. And sometimes it's unavoidable. I mean, the fact is that if Almeida had lost, well, if Almeida had lost, all the real long parlays all would lose. The only thing would win would be the fact that we kept this group separate and we would have won this 3-card parlay. So the whole idea is to put yourself in a position where something bad happens to one person doesn't destroy all your parlays, which is, I find, works a little better. And it's hard to do that because you just never know in this fight game who's going to win and who's going to lose. And things happen. It's a fist fight. Somebody can get hit. Somebody can get knocked out. Somebody can have a bad weight cut and not come in at 100%. Somebody can have an injury during his training. And a lot of times these guys will still fight even during the injury or take the fight because they don't want to lose the paycheck. Unfortunately, you're going to lose your money. So yeah, so many things can happen. So you got to cover as many bases as you can. So even if things don't work out, like for example, in this case, like we had the first 2 legs come in and the combination legs come in, we've easily made we've made enough money to make a profit, but we've also paid all our money that we've paid out. We've made more than that back. And the whole idea is even if you win a small parlay, if you can, then at least you don't have any money out where your amount of money, your total amount of money that you're using for this is depreciating. Sometimes it does, but generally, even if you hit part of your parlay and you get some of the money back or all the money back and then you're back to square one, that's okay, because you can keep fighting the fight if you have money. If you keep losing and eventually goes down to 0. But the whole idea is to separate it enough where even if things don't go quite your way, you recover your losses or most of your losses. And that's the best case scenario, because sometimes things just go wrong and it just didn't work out for you or for me, right? And I'm here to hopefully help you to avoid those type of bets. So which is why we're going over each individual fighter. As we go along, I'll do a live stream. And at that point, I will encourage people to, even give me some tips. I have a few friends of mine that for these fights in particular, told me straight up even before we had gone in. They said, there's no way Figueiredo is going to win. Moreno's going to be the lock. There's no way Teixeira is going to win. Hill would be the lock. There's no way Rua is going to win. I mean, mind you, these are question marks. I had my questions about these fights anyway, but they were like for sure, yeah, they were definitely going to go the other way. So everybody sees something different, and as we go to the live streams, I will encourage everybody to give their points of view because, hey, you can always learn something from everybody, right? Somebody's got something that they know that we don't know. But having said that, the next video will be for the UFC coming up this Saturday on January 28th. That will be coming out tomorrow morning. I'm running about a day late. This should have been out yesterday. This morning should have been the fight predictions for the Saturday, but I'm running about a day late. So tomorrow morning we'll have that out, and hopefully we'll try to break this down. It's a card that there's not a lot of fighters that are known. So it's going to be a harder card to pick, but I'm looking through some tape on the fighters that I haven't seen before. And we'll try to do the best we can. We'll make a list like we did before with most certain to the least certain. And we'll do our best. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye-bye.